The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sharp, sterile lines across the floor of the animal shelter. In the far corner of the room, behind a reinforced chain-link cage, sat a dog that seemed to embody every warning the staff had scribbled on the signs taped to his enclosure. Diablo, they called him. A massive pit bull mix with jagged scars etched into his face and flanks. His black fur was streaked with brown, and his amber eyes glowed with a mixture of intelligence and something darker: anger, mistrust, perhaps even pain. People passed by his cage quickly, whispering to each other with nervous smiles, avoiding his gaze as if he were contagious. "He's dangerous," one woman said, clutching her child. "They say he's already bitten people twice." Another man shook his head. "I wouldn't go near that dog for all the money in the world. He's done for." A few teenagers dared to peek at him from across the room, making mock growling noises before running off, laughing nervously. Diablo didn't react. His head rested low, his eyes sharp and calculating. But the slight twitch of a lip, showing jagged teeth, made anyone close enough feel a chill crawl down their spine. Ethan Cole entered the shelter like he always did, with quiet steps and careful eyes. A former EMT in his early 30s, his frame was lean but sturdy, his hands calloused from years of lifting and aiding the injured. There was a subtle limp in his left leg, a souvenir from a rescue mission gone wrong years ago, and a faint scar traced along his forearm. Most people wouldn't have noticed it, but he carried it like a silent badge, a reminder of every life he couldn't save. Ethan walked past rows of barking dogs, ignoring the pleading eyes of golden retrievers, the nervous whimpers of rescued shepherds, the timid yips of tiny terriers. He wasn't here for the friendly ones. He was looking for the one nobody wanted, and when he stopped in front of Diablo's cage, everything in the room seemed to pause. The dog's eyes widened slightly as Ethan crouched down to meet him at eye level. Diablo growled low and slow, a deep rumble that made the bars vibrate. Every muscle in his massive frame was coiled, ready to spring. The growl turned into a snarl as he lunged forward, snapping his jaws mere inches from Ethan's face. Most people would have stumbled back, screamed, or frozen in terror, but Ethan remained still, calm. "I know what fear looks like," he whispered, his voice soft yet unwavering. For a moment the growling stopped. Diablo's head tilted slightly, his amber eyes studying Ethan like a wary judge. He snorted, a puff of warm air against the steel bars, and then, almost imperceptibly, lowered his hackles. Ethan slowly extended a hand, palm open, toward the dog, every second stretched, taut with tension. A single wrong move could end in disaster. The shelter staff held their breath. "Sir, don't," one of them started, but Ethan didn't flinch. He signed the adoption paperwork with deliberate care, ignoring the frantic whispers and the worried glances around him. Diablo's growls became quieter, almost hesitant. The transformation wasn't immediate, but the staff could sense it. There was something between the two of them, a connection they couldn't explain. As Ethan clipped the leash onto Diablo's collar, the dog's muscles tensed again. He barked, loud and threatening, startling a group of visitors nearby. A child shrieked and backed away, and a volunteer jumped forward to intervene. "He's not safe," someone shouted. Ethan's calm voice cut through the panic. "I've got him." And for a moment, everyone doubted the man who had just adopted the so-called most dangerous dog in the shelter. The walk to the car was tense. Diablo pulled on the leash, snarling at every passerby, every rustling trash bag, every distant bark. Ethan kept his grip firm but gentle, guiding him without force. Every step was a battle of wills, and yet with every bark and lunge, Ethan didn't retreat. He didn't falter. There was a silent communication, a mutual understanding building between them. By the time they reached Ethan's car, Diablo's breathing was heavy, his body rigid with tension, but there was no outright attack. Ethan opened the door and gestured for him to get in. Diablo hesitated for a heartbeat, his eyes darting around as if calculating whether it was a trap. Then, with a fluid, wary movement, he climbed into the backseat. Ethan settled into the driver's seat, his heart pounding, not from fear, but from anticipation. As they drove away from the shelter, the city streets blurred under the headlights. Diablo's growls turned into low whines, soft and uncertain. He kept his head down, eyes flicking toward Ethan occasionally. The tension in the car was palpable, yet something unspoken passed between them, a fragile trust forming in the silence of a long, uneasy ride. When they arrived at Ethan's modest home in the outskirts of town, Diablo leapt out of the car before Ethan could even unbuckle his seatbelt. He bolted toward the yard, sniffing and circling, muscles coiled like springs. Ethan followed at a careful distance. The dog's instincts were raw, untamed, but he didn't run away, didn't attack. Instead, he stopped in the middle of the lawn and stared at Ethan, waiting, testing, assessing. Inside the house, the reality of living with Diablo became immediate and visceral. He destroyed the old rug in the entryway, tore at a chair leg, and snapped at shadows in the corners. The chaos was relentless, a storm contained in a four-room house. Yet Ethan didn't yell. He didn't punish. He simply moved slowly, guiding Diablo through the space, speaking softly, offering calm and presence. And slowly, inch by inch, the growling eased, the snapping subsided, the tension ebbed. For hours, the dog circled the living room, eyeing Ethan, sizing him up, calculating. Ethan lay on the couch, observing the creature that the world had already condemned. He noticed the scars, deep, jagged lines across the dog's face, evidence of past battles. He saw the hesitation in his eyes, the uncertainty, the fear masked by aggression. He understood with a clarity that shocked him that Diablo wasn't inherently dangerous. He was a product of pain, betrayal, and neglect. By the time night fell, the house was quiet. Diablo lay in the corner, tense but calm. Ethan, exhausted, leaned back against the wall and whispered almost to himself, "We're going to get through this." Diablo's ears twitched, his eyes following Ethan's every movement. In that small, dimly lit living room, a fragile bond was forming, one built on patience, courage, and understanding. Ethan didn't know it yet, but this night marked the beginning of something extraordinary. Diablo was more than a dog. He was a living, breathing challenge, a test of patience, empathy, and resilience. And Ethan was ready to face it, no matter what the world said. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes, carrying the distant sounds of the city. But inside, a new silence took hold, a silence filled with anticipation, tension, and the unspoken question: could a dog condemned as the most dangerous in the city find redemption? Ethan stared at Diablo, whose amber eyes glimmered in the faint light. A growl rumbled low in his chest, not a threat, but a warning, a question. And as Ethan held his gaze, he knew that what happened next wouldn't just change the dog, it would change him forever. The first night with Diablo ended not in chaos, but in fragile understanding. Yet even in that small victory, there lingered a question no one could answer. Could a man tame the most dangerous dog in the city, without becoming broken in the process? If you want, I can continue with part 2 next, keeping the same cinematic, suspenseful style, and expanding it to 1,200 words, so the story flows seamlessly for social media drama. Do you want me to do that? You said. Continue part 2, 1,200 words. ChatGPT said. Absolutely. Let's expand part 2 into a full 1,200-word cinematic continuation, keeping the tension, drama, and suspense high. Part 2, The Warning, expanded 1,200 words. Ethan woke the next morning to the sound of claws scraping across hardwood. Diablo was packing in the living room, head low, growling softly, nostrils flaring. The sun streamed through half-closed blinds, casting long, shifting shadows that made the dog even more imposing. Ethan rubbed the sleep from his eyes and tried to stand. His body ached, every joint stiff, his old injury throbbing. But he knew the first step to taming Diablo was patience, not panic. He called softly, "Come here, Diablo," but the dog froze mid-step, eyes sharp, scanning every corner of the room. Then the low, dangerous growl returned. Ethan's heart sank. He realized this was the moment most owners would fail. This wasn't about strength. It was about trust. Diablo wasn't just aggressive, he was terrified. And fear, as Ethan knew from years on the field, could make even the strongest creature unpredictable. Suddenly, the shelter manager's voice crackled over the phone. "Ethan, I don't know what you're thinking. That dog is unstable. We've had him longer than anyone can remember. He's attacked staff, volunteers, even other dogs. People call him the Hellhound." "You." "I know what I'm doing," Ethan interrupted gently but firmly. "I've dealt with fear before. I can read it. Diablo just needs someone who won't run." The manager's sigh was audible through the receiver. "I can't stop you, but be careful. That dog isn't like any other." And then, as if on cue, Diablo snapped. A chair flew across the room as the dog lunged at the sliding glass door, teeth clashing against the handle. Ethan froze, chest tight, as he watched Diablo's raw power. A single misstep, a sudden noise, and the dog could have easily broken free. But instead of attacking Ethan, Diablo's gaze flicked back to him, hesitating. It was the first time Ethan noticed the conflict in the dog's eyes, instinct to lash out, desire to obey. He took a slow step forward. "Easy, it's okay," he whispered. Diablo's growl softened, but his body remained coiled like a spring. Ethan extended a hand slowly, palm open, toward the dog. Diablo sniffed the air, his massive head tilting slightly. Then, lightning fast, he snapped, but not at Ethan. At the sound of a child's laughter drifting from a neighbor's yard. The incident was a wake-up call. Ethan realized that while he might earn Diablo's trust, the world around them was still dangerous, or at least unpredictable. Every sound, every sudden movement could trigger the instincts drilled into him over years of abuse. And yet, Ethan didn't retreat. He remained calm, unwavering, reading every micro-expression, every twitch of muscle, every flicker of the eye. Later that day, as the sun sank low over the horizon, a knock came at the door. Animal control. Their uniforms were stiff, their eyes wary. "We've had reports," one officer said, his tone clipped. "Neighbors saw a large dog outside, lunging at anyone who passed. You understand the liability here, right?" Ethan nodded, motioning for Diablo to sit. The dog complied, albeit tensely, ears flat against his skull. "I understand," Ethan said calmly. "I know his history, but he's not dangerous to me. He just needs guidance." The officer shook his head. "Guidance doesn't stop a dog trained to fight. You know what happens next if he hurts someone, right? He's on a short leash. One mistake and—" Before he could finish, Diablo let out a low, throaty growl that silenced the room. The officer stepped back. Diablo's eyes were fixed, unwavering, not in aggression but in warning. The hair along his spine rose as he positioned himself between Ethan and the door. He didn't move to attack, but the message was clear. No one came near his person without consequences. Ethan's hand rested gently on Diablo's massive head. "He's scared," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "Not cruel, not aggressive, scared. And scared doesn't need punishment, it needs trust." The officer left reluctantly, muttering about liability and permits. Ethan closed the door and exhaled, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew that Diablo's true danger wasn't in his teeth or size, it was in the perception people had of him. And in a world that feared him before knowing him, any small slip could end in tragedy. That night the tension inside the house escalated. Diablo's instincts were raw. Every shadow seemed like a threat, every creak of the floorboards a challenge. Ethan tried to sleep on the couch, exhausted, but kept one hand on the dog, feeling the subtle shifts in muscle and tail, anticipating movement. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the moment arrived that would test everything Ethan thought he knew about the dog. A distant firework exploded somewhere across town, loud and sudden. Diablo bolted upright, hackles raised, teeth bared. His eyes darted around the room, breathing ragged, muscles taut. Ethan froze, every ounce of him alert as the dog launched toward him, jaws snapping inches from his face. And then he stopped. Diablo paused mid-leap, inches from Ethan's throat. His body trembled violently, eyes wild. And then with a deep, shuddering exhale, he retreated, his tail tucked low, ears pinned back, eyes flicking to Ethan as if searching for guidance. Ethan lay there on the couch, heart pounding, realizing something profound. The dog had been trained to obey violence, to strike first and assess later, but he chose not to bite. He had recognized the difference between threat and safety, and that choice, made in a fraction of a second, was monumental. Ethan whispered a name softly, almost instinctively. "Good boy, Diablo." The dog froze, then slowly lowered himself to the floor, body still trembling but no longer aggressive. The growl softened to a whine. The night held its breath, the storm contained in the silence of trust. In that moment, Ethan understood the enormity of the task ahead. Diablo was not a monster, he was a survivor. Every scar, every twitch, every fearful reaction was a testament to a life spent in pain, fear, and misunderstanding. Ethan's heart ached for the dog, but a strange determination took root. He knew he could not fail. Over the next hours, Ethan guided Diablo gently through the house, allowing him to explore, sniff, and assert his presence without aggression. He discovered the dog's preferences: a spot in the corner near the window where he could watch the street, a particular squeaky toy that calmed him, a soft blanket that made him kneel and settle. These small victories were monumental, tiny threads in the fabric of trust slowly weaving between man and dog. By dawn, Diablo lay near Ethan's feet, eyes half closed, breathing deep and even. Ethan stared down at him, exhausted, exhilarated, and terrified all at once. Outside, the city woke up, oblivious to the silent battle fought within these walls. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The dog, who had been called the most dangerous in the city, feared and labeled a killer, had made a choice that night. A choice to hold back, to trust, to survive. And Ethan knew, with a clarity that shook him to his core, that the next days, weeks, and months would test every skill, every ounce of patience, every heartbeat of courage he had ever possessed. For Diablo was not tamed, not yet, and the world outside would not wait for him to become safe. The question hung in the air like smoke. Could a man truly guide a dog scarred by cruelty, trained for violence, and feared by everyone else without both of them being broken in the process? The growl in the corner of the room, low and hesitant, reminded Ethan that trust was a fragile thing. And that night, as the city slept unaware, man and dog began a journey neither of them could yet imagine, a journey that would test the boundaries of fear, loyalty, and redemption. The sun had long disappeared behind the city skyline, leaving Ethan's small home bathed in the cold glow of streetlights. Inside, shadows clung to the corners, twisting with every flicker of the overhead bulb. Diablo, now more alert than ever, prowled the living room, muscles coiled and eyes sharp, ears rotating like radar dishes at every faint sound. His growls were gone, replaced with a low, uneasy rumble, the kind that warned of an imminent storm rather than inviting confrontation. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching. The chaos of the first night had only hinted at the storm to come. Every object in the house seemed a potential weapon or target for Diablo's unrestrained energy. The couch with shredded arms, the rug torn to threads, the kitchen chair missing a leg from an earlier lunge. Yet, despite the destruction, Ethan felt a strange calm. He understood the dog better than anyone else ever could. Diablo wasn't defiant, he was scared. Every snap, every growl, was a reaction to years of abuse, neglect, and fear. Tonight, the test would be harder. A sudden noise, a branch scraping against the window, made Diablo snap upright, fur bristling, teeth bared. Ethan moved slowly toward him, speaking softly, almost chanting, "Easy, it's okay, I'm here." Diablo's eyes flicked to his owner, amber orbs scanning for reassurance. Ethan extended a hand, palm open, a silent invitation. The dog sniffed, then stiffened, coiled like a spring ready to snap. Then, lightning fast, Diablo lunged, not at Ethan but at the window. Glass rattled as he slammed against it, claws scraping the sill. Ethan caught him just in time, grabbing the collar and speaking firmly, "No, calm." Diablo froze, tense and trembling, and then slowly sank to the floor. The growl became a whine. his massive head lowered, eyes flicking nervously to Ethan. Hours passed like this, a delicate dance of caution and trust. Ethan learned quickly. One wrong movement, one raised voice, one sudden noise, and Diablo would revert to instinct, violent, uncontrollable instinct. But with patience, the dog began to understand that Ethan wasn't a threat. Every touch, every soft word, every careful correction was a thread weaving a fragile connection. By midnight, exhaustion had taken over. Ethan sprawled on the floor, leaning against the couch, his arm draped over Diablo's broad back. The dog shivered slightly at first, but slowly, hesitantly, settled, resting his massive head on Ethan's chest. For the first time since they had met, there was a quiet between them, a fragile truce. And then the past caught up. Ethan's phone buzzed, an alert from the shelter. He opened the message with tired fingers. A local news report about a dog attack downtown. Images flashed across the screen, and Ethan felt his chest tighten. The headline screamed, "Pit Bull Terrorizes Neighborhood." His stomach churned with dread, not for the story itself, but because he knew that if Diablo hadn't been guided carefully, the headlines could just as easily have been about his own home. The phone slipped from his hands as a distant siren wailed. Diablo bolted upright, ears pricked, body coiled. Ethan's heart leapt. He tried to soothe the dog with calm words, hands steady, but Diablo's training, his fear, and the memory of past violence surged forward like a tidal wave. Suddenly, Ethan's own injury flared, his leg spasming painfully. He stumbled, barely catching himself against the couch. Diablo froze mid-step, eyes wide, sensing the shift. For a moment, Ethan's heart froze too. The dog, who had spent every waking second reading his owner's cues, suddenly seemed torn. Was this a moment to attack, to protect, to assert dominance? Instead, something extraordinary happened. Diablo backed away just slightly and lowered his massive frame to the floor, eyes flicking toward Ethan with what seemed like concern. He didn't approach, didn't snap, didn't panic. He simply observed, waiting. The trust that had begun forming over the past hours, thread by thread, word by word, had taken hold in a critical moment. Ethan sank to the floor completely, wincing as pain shot up his leg. Diablo hesitated, sniffing the air, then stepped closer, head low, ears alert. But he didn't jump on Ethan. Instead, he nudged him gently, brushing his massive snout against Ethan's arm. The gesture was small, almost imperceptible to anyone else. But Ethan's heart leapt. For the first time, he felt that Diablo wasn't just reacting to fear, he was reacting to him, his owner, his partner in this struggle. Hours dragged on. Outside, the city's hum of sirens and traffic seemed distant, irrelevant. Inside, a different battle raged, one of trust, fear, and survival. Diablo remained restless, alert, occasionally whining or snapping at shadows. But with every passing hour, his aggression softened, replaced by cautious curiosity, tentative obedience, and fleeting moments of affection. At 2:17 a.m., the real test arrived. A firework exploded somewhere in the distance, loud and sudden, rattling windows and shaking the floor. Diablo's body tensed immediately, muscles coiled, fur bristling like knives. He lunged toward Ethan, teeth bared, eyes wide and wild. In another home, in another situation, that leap could have ended in disaster. But not tonight. Ethan, prepared, spoke calmly but firmly. It's okay, Diablo, not now." He extended a hand, steady, open. The dog froze mid-leap, every muscle quivering, every instinct screaming at him to strike. And then he paused. Inches from Ethan's face, teeth glinting in the dim light, Diablo froze. Slowly, shuddering, he lowered himself to the floor. The growl became a soft whine. He looked up at Ethan, eyes wide and searching, as if asking, "Did I do right?" Ethan's heart swelled. He whispered almost reverently, "Good boy, you did good." Diablo's ears twitched, tail tucked but relaxed slightly. The tension in the room melted like fog in the morning sun. For a moment, man and dog simply stared at each other, breathing heavy, muscles still taut, eyes locked. It was a fragile, silent victory, a promise that this was only the beginning of their journey. Both had been tested. Both had survived. and both had learned in the crucible of fear and instinct that trust could be forged even in the most unlikely of places. As dawn crept in, painting the walls with gold and orange, Diablo lay at Ethan's feet, trembling but calm. Ethan, exhausted but triumphant, traced the dog's scars with gentle fingers. Each line told a story of abuse, of betrayal, of survival. But tonight, one more story could be added, the story of trust beginning to bloom, even in the darkest places. Outside, the city was waking. Life went on, oblivious to the quiet miracle in Ethan's living room. And yet, inside that small house, a battle had been fought and won, not with force, not with punishment, but with patience, understanding, and courage. Ethan knew the journey would only get harder. Diablo's past trauma wasn't gone. The city would always fear him. One mistake, one sudden noise, one stranger's misstep could undo everything. But tonight, for the first time, Ethan saw what others could not. The dog wasn't dangerous. He was scarred. He was afraid. And he had just made a choice. The first night with Diablo ended not in disaster, but in understanding. And yet, even as Ethan drifted into a fitful sleep, the shadows in the corners seemed to whisper. The real challenges were only beginning. Outside the window, a figure watched. The city had many secrets, and Diablo's story was about to collide with them in ways Ethan couldn't yet imagine. If you want, I can continue with Part 4, also expanded to 1,200 words, where Diablo's past is uncovered, the danger of his training is revealed, and Ethan's resolve is tested more than ever, raising the stakes dramatically. Do you want me to continue with Part 4? You said. Continue Part 4, 1,200 words. ChatGPT said. Absolutely. Here's Part 4 expanded into a full 1,200-word cinematic narrative, ramping up tension, revealing Diablo's past, and testing Ethan's resolve. Part 4, The Past Comes Out, expanded 1,200 words. The morning sunlight seeped through the blinds, painting stripes across the living room floor where Diablo lay, tense yet obedient. The chaos of the first night had subsided, replaced by a fragile rhythm of cautious trust. Ethan moved slowly, guiding the dog with soft words and calm presence, but he could feel the weight of something unresolved, a storm that had not yet passed. He was reaching for the coffee when his phone buzzed, an unexpected alert from the shelter. The message was a reminder, follow up on Diablo's history, recent reports filed. Ethan opened the attached PDF, curious. The first line made him pause. Diablo was rescued from underground fighting rings. His eyes scanned the document, each paragraph painting a darker picture than he had imagined. The dog had not simply been aggressive. He had been trained to be violent, starved, beaten, forced to attack or endure unbearable pain. Each bite, each growl, each snap chain in the shelter was a reflection of survival instincts drilled into him by cruel hands. Ethan's chest tightened. He had known the dog's past was troubled, but this was something else entirely. Ethan crouched near Diablo, speaking softly, almost to himself. No wonder it wasn't just fear. It was conditioning, torture. Pain made a predator of you, Diablo, but not a killer, not really. Diablo's amber eyes flicked to him, ears pricked, as if acknowledging the truth in his words. For the first time, Ethan saw not just fear or aggression, but a lifetime of betrayal mirrored in the dog's gaze. That night, a new challenge arrived. A loud bang echoed from the streets, a car backfiring, perhaps fireworks or a distant construction accident. Diablo bolted upright instantly, muscles coiled, teeth bared. He lunged toward Ethan, knocking him against the wall. Pain shot through Ethan's arm and side, a reminder of his old injury, but he didn't yell. He didn't punish. He stayed grounded, speaking softly. Easy, it's okay, Diablo, it's okay. Not now. Diablo froze mid-leap, ears rotating, eyes darting. He growled low and long, but he didn't attack. Instead, he stepped back, trembling, and then sank to the floor, whimpering. Ethan breathed deeply, heart racing. The dog's choice was clear. His instincts screamed violence, but his trust in Ethan, fragile, nascent, had held him back. The next day, Ethan dug deeper. He called the local authorities, asking for court records and reports tied to Diablo's previous owners. Every record confirmed the worst. Diablo had been used in underground dog fights, beaten into submission, and abandoned when he became too unpredictable. He was labeled aggressive, unadoptable, dangerous, all because survival instincts were mistaken for innate malice. Ethan sat on the couch, Diablo at his feet, reading aloud from the reports. Forced to fight, chained, starved, punished for survival, beaten if he didn't attack. Diablo's ears twitched at every word as if understanding more than any dog should. Ethan's hands shook. All of this for survival, not for cruelty, not for hate. You were just trying to live. The dog nuzzled against his hand, and for the first time, Ethan felt the depth of their connection. Not just trust, but empathy, shared pain, and a quiet understanding. But the past was never far behind. That evening, a neighbor's dog barked loudly, startling Diablo. He lunged toward the window, teeth bared, claws scraping the floor. Ethan rushed forward, trying to calm him, but Diablo snapped at the air near his hand. Pain shot through Ethan's wrist, leaving small cuts from the dog's sharp teeth. He flinched but stayed calm, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay. Not now." Diablo froze, eyes wide, then sank slowly to the floor, tail tucked but trembling. It was a pattern now. Every unexpected noise, every sudden movement, every shadow could trigger the old instincts embedded in Diablo's body. And Ethan realized something frightening. If the world outside their walls remained as chaotic and unpredictable as this neighborhood, Diablo could never be fully safe, or safe for anyone else. Then came the call from animal control. They had received complaints about Diablo, neighbors seeing him packing aggressively near the fence, barking, growling at passers-by. "Sir," the officer said firmly, "one more incident and we'll have to take him. Liability is high. That dog is dangerous." Ethan took a deep breath. "He's not dangerous, not to me. He's scared. He's reacting to a lifetime of trauma. He's not violent by nature. He's defensive because the world forced him to be. He's learning, but it's going to take time." The officer's pause was long, almost contemplative. "I've seen dogs like this before. Most don't change, most bite, most fail. You sure about this?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "I'm sure he's worth the risk." Later that night, Ethan was alone in the living room with Diablo. He could feel the dog's tension like electricity in the air. The memories of abuse were never far from the surface. Diablo's muscles twitched, ears rotated, tail stiff. But Ethan spoke softly, every word deliberate, calm, steady. "I've got you. You're safe now. I'm not going anywhere." The dog paused mid-step, amber eyes locking with Ethan. And in that gaze, Ethan saw more than fear. He saw the beginnings of trust, the faintest glimmer of hope. For the first time, Diablo's snarls and growls were not just instinct. They were questions, testing whether the safety he felt in Ethan's presence could hold against the weight of his past. Hours later, when the house was silent, Ethan reflected on everything he had learned about Diablo's life. The dog's aggression wasn't malice. It was trauma, fear, and survival instincts twisted by abuse. Every bark, every snap, every growl was a response to past horrors, not a reflection of the dog's nature. Ethan realized something profound. The most dangerous part of Diablo wasn't his size or his teeth. It was the world's assumption that he was broken beyond repair. And that assumption, if not carefully navigated, could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. As the clock ticked past midnight, Diablo finally lay down near Ethan's feet, ears rotating toward every creak and groan of the house. His breathing slowed, the tension in his body lessening with every careful, patient word from Ethan. But even in this small victory, the shadow of the past loomed large. Ethan leaned back on the couch, eyes tired but mind alert. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, walks in the park, interactions with strangers, noises from the city. Every situation could trigger instinctual reactions, but tonight they had survived. They had endured, and they had begun to heal together. Yet even in the quiet of the night, A creeping question lingered. Could Ethan truly protect Diablo from the world that had already broken him once? Or would the dog's past come crashing into their fragile present, forcing them both to confront a danger neither was ready for? Outside, the city slept, oblivious to the quiet, tense vigil within Ethan's home. But inside, a bond was forming, delicate yet powerful, a bond that would be tested in ways Ethan could not yet imagine. And as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, both man and dog drifted into uneasy sleep, each haunted by memories, each bracing for the trials the next day would bring. Because the truth was clear, the past wasn't done with Diablo, and soon Ethan would have to face it head-on. Weeks passed in a blur of small victories and constant vigilance. Diablo's aggression softened, though it remained a raw, unpredictable edge beneath the surface. Ethan structured their days meticulously, walks at dawn, obedience exercises in the yard, and quiet moments of calm together. Each success, Diablo sitting without snapping, staying while Ethan prepared a meal, even resting without growling at shadows, felt monumental. Neighbors began to notice the change, albeit with skepticism. The man with the killer dog now walked cautiously down the street, leash taut but controlled, Diablo obedient by his side. Yet whispers followed them wherever they went. That dog's going to snap one day. Why would anyone adopt a pit bull like that? The world hadn't changed its opinion of Diablo. Only Ethan had. But the real test wasn't in public walks or cautious neighbors. The real test came unexpectedly, in the quiet of an ordinary afternoon. Ethan was walking Diablo near the local park, leash slack but secure, when his old injury flared, a sharp pain in his leg that buckled his knee. He fell hard onto the pavement, a stifled gasp escaping his lips. Diablo froze, ears rotating, eyes scanning, muscles coiled. This was a moment most untrained dogs would see as opportunity or threat. Most dogs would panic, bark, or run. But Diablo did something extraordinary. He stepped closer, nudged Ethan gently with his nose, then retreated slightly to position himself between Ethan and the street. Cars passed inches away, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Diablo barked, not in aggression, but as a warning, a signal to keep the world away from the man he had begun to trust with his life. Ethan gasped, his vision blurred with pain and adrenaline. "Diablo, good boy," he whispered hoarsely, struggling to stand. But his body refused to cooperate. He collapsed again, face nearly scraping the asphalt. Diablo didn't panic. He remained vigilant, eyes locked on Ethan, growls low and steady at approaching pedestrians and cyclists. A passerby hesitated, uncertain. The sight of Diablo, a massive, scarred dog standing protectively over a fallen man, was terrifying. Most would have crossed to the other side of the street, avoiding what they assumed was imminent danger. But Diablo's body language was clear. "Stay back, danger is near." Minutes felt like hours. Ethan's breathing was ragged. His leg throbbed violently. And then he heard it, distant sirens growing louder. He realized someone had called for help. Diablo's ears perked. He remained poised, coiled, guarding Ethan until help arrived. Paramedics arrived, rushing to the scene. One of them froze as they approached. Their eyes widened at the sight of Diablo, standing alert, massive and threatening, but entirely controlled. The paramedic whispered to a colleague, voice barely audible, "I've seen that dog before, wasn't he?" Ethan blinked up at them, wincing. "He saved me," he panted. "Not aggressive, just protective." The officer nodded slowly, recognizing the dog from shelter records and local reports. "He's trained to protect, or at least he's learned. That's impressive restraint for a dog like him." Ethan allowed the paramedics to lift him onto the stretcher. Diablo remained by his side, watching every movement, tail low but tense. He didn't follow the ambulance immediately. He didn't run off. He stayed, a silent guardian, until Ethan was secure inside the vehicle. At the hospital, doctors worked quickly. Ethan's leg injury was severe, worse than he had anticipated. They stabilized him, preparing him for surgery. Diablo waited outside the emergency room, massive head resting gently on Ethan's bed when he was finally allowed inside. Nurses and staff were in awe. The dog, once labeled unadoptable, now exhibited behavior that no trained security or rescue dog could match. Ethan's heart ached, not from the injury but from the realization of what Diablo had just done. The dog's instinct, honed by years of abuse and survival, had been channeled through trust and patience. Diablo had chosen restraint over violence. He had chosen loyalty over chaos. During recovery, the bond between man and dog deepened further. Diablo stayed close, never leaving Ethan's side, always alert, always protective. Doctors marveled at the relationship. Staff whispered stories about animals sensing danger, but Diablo's actions went beyond intuition. He acted deliberately, with judgment and understanding. Word of the incident spread quickly. Local news stations ran short clips. Former killer dog protects owner during medical emergency. Social media exploded with comments, shares, and debates. For once, Diablo was seen not as a threat, but as a hero. Videos of the incident circulated, showing the massive, scarred dog standing guard, restraining instinctual aggression, and keeping a vulnerable man safe until help arrived. Ethan watched the coverage from his hospital bed, disbelief and pride washing over him. Diablo rested his massive head on Ethan's chest, nudging him gently, eyes soft and amber. "You saved me, buddy," Ethan whispered. "And I guess, in a way, I saved you too." But fame brought new challenges. The story of Diablo's loyalty and courage attracted attention, not all of it positive. One evening, a shadowy figure lurked near Ethan's home, eyeing Diablo through the window. Rumors of a fight dog gone viral had piqued the interest of someone dangerous. They weren't looking for a companion, they were looking for profit. That night, a loud crash shattered the quiet. Ethan bolted upright in bed, heart racing. Diablo was already on his feet, every muscle taut, eyes scanning the room. The intruder had broken a window and was trying to slip inside. Diablo leapt into action, positioning himself between Ethan and the threat, teeth bared, growls low and menacing. The confrontation was brief but intense. The intruder, realizing the dog was trained not just in aggression but in restraint, hesitated. Diablo's body language was clear. One wrong move and consequences would be swift. The intruder tried to back away, but Diablo blocked every exit, standing firm without striking, showing discipline beyond instinct. Police arrived moments later, alerted by a neighbor. They found the intruder pinned in the corner, unharmed physically but utterly controlled by Diablo's presence. Officers whispered among themselves, amazed at the dog's restraint. "That dog, he could have torn him apart," one said. But he didn't. He controlled the situation perfectly. Ethan, heart pounding, hugged Diablo's massive neck. You kept us both safe," he whispered. The dog leaned into him, body heavy and solid, as if acknowledging the gravity of what had just occurred. That night, Ethan realized something profound. Diablo's danger was never in his size or teeth. It was in the world's misunderstanding of him. Every scar, every growl, every instinct was a reaction to survival. And when paired with patience, understanding, and trust, that danger could be transformed into loyalty, protection, and love. For Ethan, the breakthrough was complete. Diablo was no longer just a dangerous dog. He was a partner, a guardian, a friend forged in the crucible of fear and understanding. But Ethan knew the journey was far from over. The city, the neighbors, even society at large, still feared what they did not understand, and Diablo's past would not remain buried forever. As the city lights flickered outside, casting long shadows across the room, Ethan and Diablo settled into a rare moment of calm. The storm of the past weeks had passed, but the future promised new challenges. And in the quiet of that night, Ethan made a silent vow. No matter what came next, no matter how dangerous the world perceived Diablo to be, he would never abandon the dog who had already risked everything for him. because Diablo had proven beyond any doubt that danger was never inherent, it was a choice. And so was loyalty. The morning after the intruder incident, the news cycle was ablaze. Local television, social media, and even national outlets were calling Diablo a hero. The dog, once labeled unadoptable and dangerous, had become a symbol of misunderstood animals everywhere. Clips of him standing protectively over Ethan, controlling a dangerous intruder without striking, went viral. Comments poured in by the thousands, some in awe, some skeptical, and some questioning how a dog like Diablo could be trusted at all. Ethan sat on the couch, exhaustion heavy in his bones, Diablo resting at his feet. The bond between them had never been stronger, yet the new attention brought an undercurrent of anxiety. He could feel it, the weight of public scrutiny, the whispers of neighbors, the eyes of strangers who didn't understand the fragile trust between man and dog. Fame was a double-edged sword. Then the first threat arrived. Late that night, a dark sedan idled across the street from Ethan's home. Shadows shifted inside, and a figure exited the vehicle, moving cautiously toward the backyard. Diablo stirred immediately, muscles coiled, ears pricked. His body radiated tension, the kind that spoke of danger far beyond the ordinary. Ethan, still recovering from his leg surgery, grabbed the leash instinctively, but Diablo's growl stopped him in his tracks. This time, the threat wasn't ignorance or fear, it was intent. The intruder from the previous night had accomplices, people who had heard about Diablo's newfound fame and saw opportunity in his size and strength. They weren't looking for companionship, they were looking for profit. Diablo assessed the situation with precision. Every step of the intruder's approach, every sound of shifting feet, every shadow cast by the moonlight was registered. He didn't bark immediately. He didn't lunge. He waited, calculated, controlled. Ethan whispered, "Diablo, stay calm. Protect, but don't attack." Diablo's amber eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to the intruder. He understood. When the intruder reached the fence, Diablo lunged, not at the man directly, but toward the fence, teeth bared, growl low and menacing. The figure froze, realizing that this dog was different, intelligent, disciplined, and aware. Another accomplice approached from the side, and Diablo shifted, blocking the path while keeping Ethan between them and the danger. The standoff lasted minutes that felt like hours. Ethan could feel his heart hammering in his chest. Diablo's body was tense, but there was no uncontrolled aggression, just calculated defense. The intruders tried to intimidate the dog, waving their arms, shouting, even throwing small objects. Diablo didn't strike. He simply positioned himself strategically, growling and snapping near objects but never touching Ethan. Police arrived just as one of the intruders tried to force the gate open. Diablo barked sharply, lunging to the side, teeth flashing. But he didn't bite. Instead, his presence alone, his massive, scarred form standing as an unyielding barrier, caused the intruders to hesitate. One by one, they retreated into the darkness, realizing that this dog was not just a survivor. He was a protector with judgment and restraint far beyond their comprehension. Ethan exhaled, kneeling beside Diablo and running a hand through his fur. "You did it," he whispered. "You kept us safe again." Diablo leaned into him, massive head resting against Ethan's shoulder, breathing steady. In that quiet moment, Ethan realized something profound. Diablo's danger had never been in his size or his teeth. It had always been in the world's misunderstanding of him. The story didn't stay local for long. National outlets picked up the narrative. Social media users created hashtags: Hero Dog, Redemption Dog, Diablo the Protector. Donations to local animal shelters soared, inspired by the story of a dog once deemed too dangerous to live. Volunteers shared the clips with new adopters, urging them to see potential where fear once dominated judgment. Ethan and Diablo became symbols of trust, patience, and the transformative power of empathy. Yet not everyone celebrated the dog. Critics called him a ticking time bomb and too dangerous to be praised publicly. Emails arrived threatening to remove him from Ethan's custody, citing liability concerns. Others feared the dog would be exploited for fame. Every day brought a new challenge, media requests, strangers approaching the house, and constant scrutiny from neighbors and authorities. But Diablo remained unshakable. One evening, while Ethan prepared dinner, a loud crash rang from the back porch. The fence had been tampered with. Diablo bolted upright instantly, growled low and threatening. Ethan grabbed the leash, but Diablo was already moving strategically, positioning himself between Ethan and the source of the noise. Shadows shifted, two figures trying to enter through the backyard gate. Diablo's stance was perfect, defensive, intimidating, yet controlled. He didn't attack. He didn't panic. He waited for Ethan's command. Ethan's voice was calm but firm. "Stay, protect." Diablo's growl deepened, warning the intruders. They hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. In that moment, a neighbor called the police. The intruders froze completely as sirens approached. Diablo, sensing the shift, remained alert but did not strike, holding his position until officers arrived. By the time the police apprehended the intruders, Diablo had become a local legend. Officers praised his restraint, acknowledging that many trained attack dogs could not have displayed the same level of control under such pressure. Ethan watched, pride and relief coursing through him. Diablo, the dog no one wanted, the dog everyone feared, had saved him again, not through mindless aggression but through loyalty, judgment, and trust. The following days were a whirlwind. Interviews, donations, and requests to share Diablo's story filled Ethan's schedule. Yet despite the fame, despite the chaos, one truth remained. Diablo was more than a dog labeled dangerous by a cruel past. He was a teacher, showing the world the difference between instinct and choice, between fear and loyalty. In quiet moments, Ethan would sit with Diablo, tracing the jagged scars that ran along his face and back. Each mark told a story of survival, pain, and resilience. Each twitch of muscle, each flick of the ear, spoke of a past that had nearly destroyed him. And yet here he was, alive, disciplined, protective, and loved. Ethan realized that the breakthrough wasn't just in the moments of danger or fame. It was in the subtle, everyday trust they had built together. The calm during walks, the quiet obedience at home, the soft nudge when Ethan was in pain, all of it was proof that understanding and patience could transform even the most dangerous fear into unwavering loyalty. But deep down, Ethan knew the challenges were far from over. Diablo's past had left scars not just on his body but on his instincts. One mistake, one sudden noise, one unexpected situation, and the delicate balance could tip. The world outside would continue to test them, strangers would continue to misjudge them, and society's fear of the unknown would remain ever present. As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows across Ethan's home, Diablo settled near the front door, ears twitching, eyes alert. He was calm but ready. Ethan, leaning against the wall, whispered softly, "You're more than anyone expected, buddy. More than anyone could imagine." Diablo responded with a gentle nudge, a silent affirmation of the bond they shared, a bond forged in fear, trust, and shared survival. That night, as Ethan drifted to sleep, he knew one undeniable truth. Diablo was no longer just the dog the world feared. He was a hero in his own right, a protector, a teacher. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, Ethan would face them with Diablo at his side, scarred, fierce, and unbreakable. Because the dog the world had labeled dangerous had already proven something extraordinary. Danger could be transformed into loyalty, fear into courage, and a once broken life into a story of redemption. And yet, even as the city slept, a shadow lingered, a reminder that fame could attract both admiration and danger. Someone, somewhere, had taken note of Diablo's abilities, and the next challenge would not come from misunderstanding, but from intentional threat. The real test was only just beginning. The weeks following Diablo's viral fame were a whirlwind of attention, gratitude, and vigilance. The dog once deemed dangerous now drew crowds of admirers wherever he went, but Ethan knew that true danger didn't announce itself. It arrived silently, unpredictably, and without warning. He had learned that every shadow, Every sudden noise and every unknown figure could trigger years of instinctual trauma. On a humid Friday evening, Ethan took Diablo for a walk along the quieter streets near his home. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and purple as the sun dipped toward the horizon, shadows stretching long and ominous. Diablo's ears twitched constantly, muscles coiled, every instinct alert. Ethan adjusted the leash, feeling the dog's tension beneath his hand. This wasn't fear, it was anticipation. Diablo knew something was out there, even if Ethan couldn't yet see it. As they turned a corner, a dark van screeched to a halt across the street. The side door slid open, revealing masked figures wielding metal chains and blunt objects. The very air seemed to thrum with danger. Diablo stiffened immediately, hackles raised, lips curled to reveal glinting teeth. Ethan froze, heart hammering. The attackers had come for Diablo. Fame had a price. His story of redemption and heroism had drawn attention from people who didn't see a dog. They saw a weapon, a prize to be stolen, sold, or exploited. And now, right here in the fatting light of the city, they intended to take him by force. Ethan whispered sharply, "Diablo, stay close. Protect, but don't attack yet." Diablo's eyes met Ethan's, amber flames of intelligence and instinct. He understood every nuance. For the first time in their weeks together, Ethan felt a flicker of fear, not for himself but for what Diablo might be forced to do. The attackers advanced quickly. Chains rattled, footsteps pounding against the asphalt. Diablo growled low, a sound that vibrated through Ethan's bones. One of the men swung a chain toward the dog, but Diablo didn't attack immediately. He pivoted, muscles coiled, eyes scanning, waiting for the right moment. He was not just a survivor, he was a strategist, a protector, and a partner in this dance of danger. Ethan's pulse raced. He could barely move, but he had trained for emergencies and he had trust in Diablo. Stay calm," he whispered, breath ragged. Diablo's growl intensified, a warning that spoke louder than words. "Back off. One wrong move and consequences will follow." The first attacker lunged directly at Ethan. Diablo reacted in a split second. He intercepted the man with incredible speed, knocking him off balance without striking. His massive body created a shield between Ethan and the threat. Another attacker swung a metal pipe, aiming for the dog, but Diablo's reflexes were lightning quick. He twisted, dodged, and barked, a warning so forceful it made the intruder hesitate. Ethan scrambled backward, clenching the leash, watching as Diablo held off multiple assailants simultaneously. The dog's strength, speed, and intelligence were staggering, but what truly terrified and amazed Ethan was Diablo's restraint. He could have attacked, could have injured anyone in reach, yet he struck only to defend, to protect, not to harm unnecessarily. A third assailant emerged from the van, this one wielding a firearm. Time seemed to slow. Diablo froze, muscles tensed, eyes locked on the movement. Ethan's heart leapt. He couldn't outrun bullets, couldn't intervene. But Diablo made a choice, one that would define their bond forever. He launched himself at the attacker, body low and powerful, knocking the man's aim off balance. The gun fired, the sound deafening, but neither Ethan nor Diablo was hit. Chaos erupted in the street. Diablo moved with precision, intercepting attackers, blocking paths, and forcing the intruders back toward the van. Each movement was calculated, protective, and intelligent, every instinct honed from trauma now redirected in defense of someone he trusted implicitly. Finally, one by one, the attackers retreated, defeated not by force alone, but by the unwavering presence of a dog who had learned to protect rather than destroy. Diablo stood panting, fur bristling, amber eyes scanning for lingering threats. Ethan fell to his knees, chest heaving, hands trembling. You did it," he whispered hoarsely, running fingers over the dog's massive head. Diablo nudged him gently, eyes soft but alert. For the first time, Ethan understood fully. This was not a dangerous dog. This was a dog who had been forced to survive, now choosing to protect with wisdom and courage. Paramedics and police arrived shortly after, summoned by witnesses who had seen the confrontation. Officers were stunned by the scene, a scarred, massive dog holding off multiple armed attackers, protecting a single man without lethal aggression. One officer shook his head. "I've seen attack dogs trained for months. None of them could do what he just did without going overboard. That dog, he's extraordinary." Ethan hugged Diablo tightly, tears streaming down his face. The adrenaline, fear, and relief coalesced into a single, overwhelming emotion: gratitude. Diablo had not only saved him, but had proven beyond doubt that trust, patience, and understanding could transform fear and aggression into loyalty and heroism. The news of the attempted abduction spread quickly. Headlines proclaimed, "Hero dog protects owner from armed attackers," "Scarred pit bull becomes national symbol of courage," and "From dangerous to devoted, the story of Diablo." Social media exploded once again, but this time there was no skepticism, only awe and admiration. Yet for Ethan, fame was secondary. What mattered was the bond they had forged through weeks of patience, trust, and understanding. Diablo was more than a viral sensation. He was a living testament to resilience, intelligence, and loyalty. That night back at home, Ethan and Diablo sat together quietly. The city hummed outside, oblivious to the trials they had faced. Diablo lay close, head resting against Ethan's shoulder, breathing steady and calm. Ethan's hand traced the jagged scars along the dog's face. "You've been through hell," he whispered softly. "But you've chosen loyalty over fear, protection over aggression. I couldn't be prouder." Diablo responded with a low rumble, his version of a sigh, and nudged Ethan gently. It was more than affection. It was a silent acknowledgement that their bond had been tested and had survived. That night, Ethan realized something profound. The dog the world had feared the most had proven himself in ways humans could barely comprehend. But even in this moment of victory, Ethan knew the journey wasn't over. Diablo's past could resurface in unexpected ways. The city, fame, and human greed were unpredictable. And yet, for the first time, Ethan had faith. Not blind faith, but faith forged in fire, that together they could face whatever came next. As they settled into the quiet of the night, one thought lingered in Ethan's mind. Danger isn't about teeth or size. It's about fear and misunderstanding. And loyalty, true loyalty, can overcome even the darkest past. Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars. Inside, a man and a dog who had faced the impossible lay side by side, ready for whatever the world dared to throw at them next. And for Diablo, the most dangerous dog in the shelter, the ultimate test had proven one truth beyond doubt. He was no longer defined by his past, but by his choices, and those choices had saved a life. The days following the attempted abduction were a whirlwind. Local and national media flooded Ethan's home, eager to cover the story of Diablo, the once feared dog who had become a hero. Reporters arrived with cameras, microphones, and questions, but Ethan's focus was on one thing: Diablo. The massive, scarred dog who had survived abuse, betrayal, and fear now lay calmly at his feet, ears twitching at every sound but completely at ease in the presence of the man who had never wavered in his trust. Diablo had earned fame, but more importantly, he had earned peace, the kind that only comes from knowing you are truly understood and valued. Visitors whispered in awe as they passed through the living room, captivated by the imposing presence that exuded both power and restraint. Children approached cautiously, and Diablo's gaze followed them, not threatening but careful, protective. He had learned the ultimate lesson: the world could be dangerous, but it could also be trusted when guided wisely. One afternoon, as Ethan sat on the porch sipping coffee, a letter arrived in a plain envelope. It bore the official seal of the city council. With trembling hands, he opened it. Diablo tilted his massive head, sensing the importance of the moment. The letter read, "In recognition of bravery, loyalty, and extraordinary courage, Diablo is hereby awarded the title of Honorary Canine Protector of the City. His actions have not only saved a life, but have demonstrated the transformative power of trust between humans and animals." Ethan blinked back tears. He looked down at Diablo, who now rested his head on Ethan's lap, eyes soft and knowing. "We did it, buddy," Ethan whispered. "They see you now. The world finally sees the truth." Diablo rumbled softly in response, a sound that had become their silent language over weeks of trials, victories, and shared survival. The city council held a small ceremony a week later in the town square. Diablo, on his custom leather leash, stood proudly beside Ethan. Children laughed, adults applauded, and reporters jostled to capture every moment. The mayor stepped forward, smiling broadly. "Today, we honor a dog who has defied expectations, who has transformed fear into courage, and whose loyalty has reminded us all of the potential for goodness in every creature, even those society once labeled dangerous." Ethan's chest swelled with pride. He thought back to the first day he had met Diablo at the shelter, a dog everyone feared, covered in scars, growling at anyone who came near. The memories of that day, of being warned, of holding the leash in his hands for the first time, of walking into a storm of teeth and fear, it all seemed like a distant nightmare compared to the reality before him now. But the ceremony wasn't just about public recognition. It was a declaration of transformation. Diablo, once the most dangerous dog in the shelter, had become a symbol of hope. His story was proof that even the most broken lives could find redemption when met with patience, understanding, and unwavering trust. Later that evening, as the sun set in brilliant streaks of gold and crimson, Ethan and Diablo walked alone through the quiet streets. The city's chaos had faded, leaving only the soft hum of distant traffic and the occasional chirp of crickets. Diablo walked calmly, leash loose, muscles relaxed. He was no longer reacting to every shadow, every noise. He had found a rhythm, a peace born from the bond he shared with Ethan. They paused at a small park where the grass was soft and dew-laden. Diablo dropped to the ground, rolling once on his back, exposing his scarred chest to the sky. Ethan laughed softly, kneeling beside him. "You've earned this, buddy, every bit of it." He ran his fingers through Diablo's fur, feeling the strength beneath the scars, the resilience that had carried him through unimaginable trials. In that quiet park, Ethan reflected on the journey. The dog the world had feared, the dog labeled dangerous, had survived underground fighting rings, abuse, abandonment, and distrust. He had been trained to attack, conditioned to fear, and tested by cruelty. Yet under Ethan's guidance, he had learned restraint, courage, and loyalty. Every moment of patience, every careful interaction, every whispered reassurance had transformed fear into protection, aggression into devotion. Diablo rose to his feet, muscles rippling in the fading light, and nudged Ethan gently toward the path home. Their steps were synchronized, the result of weeks of shared experience and unspoken understanding. The city behind them, alive with chaos and noise, seemed distant, irrelevant. In that moment, all that mattered was the man and the dog, the bond forged in fire, trauma, and love. That night, as they settled into their home, Diablo lay at Ethan's feet, breathing steady, eyes alert but calm. Ethan traced the scars along his body one final time, whispering softly, "You were always brave, Diablo. You were always loyal. The world just had to catch up." Diablo rumbled in response, a sound of quiet affirmation and contentment. In the weeks that followed, life returned to a delicate normal. Ethan and Diablo continued their walks, visits to the park, and quiet moments at home. The fame persisted, but it no longer defined them. Diablo had transcended labels, showing everyone that even a life scarred by fear and cruelty could become a story of courage, loyalty, and hope. The shelter that had once deemed him dangerous now featured his story as a lesson in rehabilitation and understanding. Volunteers came to see him, inspired by the transformation they witnessed firsthand. Donations surged, helping countless other animals who had been labeled unadoptable. Diablo's legacy became more than personal. It became a movement, a reminder that patience and trust could unlock the potential in even the most feared creatures. One quiet evening, Ethan sat on the porch, Diablo resting his massive head on his lap, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Ethan's hand moved slowly over the dog's fur, fingers lingering over each scar, each mark of survival. "We've come a long way, buddy," he whispered. "From the shelter to here, from fear to trust, from danger to heroism." Diablo lifted his head, amber eyes meeting Ethan's, filled with intelligence, loyalty, and something deeper, understanding. It was the culmination of everything they had endured. Every growl, every snap, every fearful glance had been transformed into courage and protection. The most dangerous dog in the shelter had not only survived but had thrived, changing the life of one man and in the process, touching the hearts of countless others. Ethan smiled, heart full. "You're home now, Diablo, forever." The dog leaned closer, pressing his massive body against Ethan, a living testament to resilience and redemption. In that embrace there was no fear, no aggression, no shadow of the past, only trust, loyalty, and an unbreakable bond. And so, the story that had begun in a dark, lonely shelter, with a dog feared by all, ended not with fear or tragedy but with triumph. Diablo, scarred but unbroken, dangerous only in perception, had become a hero, a guardian, and a symbol of hope. The world had learned a lesson the hard way. Even the most feared and misunderstood beings are capable of greatness, courage, and love, if only someone believes in them. Ethan looked down at Diablo one last time that night, whispering softly, "You've shown the world who you really are, and more importantly, you've shown me who I can be." Diablo's eyes glimmered in the moonlight, warm and steady, as if agreeing with every word. The journey was complete. The danger was behind them, replaced by trust, love, and the promise of tomorrow. And in the quiet of that night, a man and a dog sat side by side, forever bound by trials, survival, and an unbreakable bond that no fear, no danger, and no misunderstanding could ever destroy. The most dangerous dog in the shelter had finally found his home, and in doing so, had rewritten his destiny.